Folks, welcome back to Canada's Boxing Channel. I'm very pleased today to have a very special guest. I have the Chief Executive Officer of Kronk Gym, Paul Bhatti, and the Managing Partner, John Lepak, joining me. For anybody watching who doesn't know, Kronk Gym is world famous, founded in 1972 by Manny Stewart, and is returning to Detroit at the historic BREWSTER Wheeler Center, where Joe Louis once trained. Gentlemen, welcome, and a huge thank you to both of you for spending time with me here this morning. I want to be respectful of your time. Let's get straight into it. For people who don't know much about Kronk, how would you describe it in a sentence or two?
I don't think a sentence or two you could describe it. It's such a part of the fabric of the modern history of boxing. You know, Emanuel Stewart and Kronk, you can't mention one without mentioning the other. I was very fortunate to have grown up in the original gym and worked for Emanuel for several years, lived with him for a couple of years as well. And it's a pillar of strength in the community for Detroit. Kronk has always been a part of the community. It's been a place to not just get kids off the street, but provide a lot of life direction for young men and women that come from the inner city. Of course, we're known for Emanuel training 41 world champions and hundreds of amateur champions, but also, it was Emanuel's influence and global reach into many other countries, including Canada, which I was very blessed to have spent a lot of time over there working through my Kronk days as well.
Awesome. Tell me, was boxing always part of your life, or did it come to you through your involvement with Kronk? I get the sense, John, that boxing has been part of your life for a very long time. Is that right?
Yeah, as Mike Akery once told me when we were standing outside of it, was then Casino Windsor, now it's Caesars Windsor. But he said, "You're a lifer, kid." So yeah, I got in when I was really young. I used to visit the gym when I was a teenager. I had a lot of friends that took up competitive boxing, and while I did my fair share of training over the years, and Emanuel convinced me to go on and have one professional fight myself, Emanuel took an understanding to my talents, I guess you could see. He had such an eye for talent, not just in the ring, but outside the ring, where Emanuel would always have the right people in the right positions around him as he built this iconic brand. And he started to mentor me on the business side of boxing while I was still a teenager. I was his assistant office manager before I was even legally old enough to go to the store and buy us a 6-pack of beer when we'd be barbecuing on a Saturday.
That's awesome. You mentioned, earlier, like that how important Kronk is to the city of Detroit and well, to the state, of course, as well. What does that legacy mean to you, like personally? I get the sense that because you've been involved for so long, that there's a deep sort of attachment there.
That's a great mental exercise, I guess, to stroll down memory lane for me personally, because there's not a day that goes by that I don't apply some sort of lesson that I learned from the time I spent growing up inside of that gym with not just so many of my friends I trained with, but the lessons I learned from Emanuel and the people that boxing allowed me to meet through my travels all over the world. And what really it means, I think, more than anything to me at this age and stage of life, is to be able to come back home to the city that birthed me, the streets that raised me, and be able to give back to the community.
How do you balance honoring Manny Stewart's vision with building something new for 2025? I get the sense that, whenever we have an iconic brand and yet we want to move it forward, and have people come through the door who won't have had that depth of knowledge that you have. How do you balance that those two interests? One wants to be conservative, but also to move forward.
I think it's a great segue. I'll start it off, and I think Paul could come in on the tail end of it as well. Is that for me, I always say this, and I know like there's certain things I'll say, and Paul will get on me about it. But look, I was a spoke in a mighty wheel, as I always say. Emmanuel had hundreds of people, if not thousands, throughout the years that played a role in, again, helping make this iconic brand what it was. And I think from where I sit in my day-to-day operations is knowing that Emmanuel cared about people. Yes, his talent was building world champions, but Emmanuel constantly was taking care of people. And I think that's again one thing that I will always carry with me through life, with or without involvement in Kronk for that matter, is treating everybody the same. Going out of your way to make sure that someone up in the rafters in the nosebleed seats at a fight, a dad that can barely afford to buy his son a ticket, and bring those people down to ringside and give them a special experience whenever possible. Helping out other people in the community, maybe small business owners. Like I was just on a call with a Detroit firefighter who has a vending machine business, and it's just little things like that a lot of people that knew Emmanuel, they'll relate to that story alone. You give the local guy the plug, you give the guy the opportunity, and you just help out wherever you can.
Is Paul, you want to jump in like John suggested you might there?
Absolutely. So for me, about the brand and the brevity of this brand, it's all about staying true to the root. We're not going to be anything that this brand wasn't in the past. What we're going to do is add on top of that. Circa 2025, the capabilities of this brand far exceed that what it previously was when it solely had one lane in boxing. Now, boxing and the youth development aspect in the community is always the underpin of this business. But again, to capitalize on the brand in terms of what's available to us in social media, the brand capture, everything that you can do these days, there's multiple tentacles that hang off Kronk. And my strategy is always going to be for all of those revenue tentacles to be the flywheel that supports the underpin of this business and not the other way around. So that's the different slant I'm bringing to it from a business perspective, but always acknowledging that Kronk will be true to what the brands, I always say the brand speaks. You can wear Nike, you can wear Adidas and Under Armour. Nobody stops you in the parking lot to say, hey, I've got one of them. No, it doesn't happen. This one, there's a memory. It invokes a moment, a situation, a fight, a time in life where I was at that gym and this is what it did for me. And I'll be honest, Bob, the outpouring from the public, because of the gym being open, we've got even the painter. The painter we have is insulted to even talk about money. He's doing it for free because his life was shaped and formed by a little fella called Emmanuel that just took time to speak to a 7-year-old that turned up at the original gym on 5555 McGraw. And this gentleman, Avis, hit me up on LinkedIn to say, if you've not got a commercial painter, I'll do it for you. When I mentioned he was insulted that I brought it up because he wants to give back. So it's a case of everybody that was served by the brand back in the day, as John was a product of, Kronk was giving to them, and now those people are giving back to us. Well, the mantra continues, the cycle starts again. We want to enable this gym to be the safe space for a lot of people in the community, the breeding ground for great amateurs to turn to successful professionals and world champions. We're not just doing this to live off the brand and sell some merch. We want world champions again. Whether we'll amass 41 like Emmanuel did, I don't know. Probably doubt it too, but we get 4 or 5, we'll be very, very, very happy.
I think, it's an interesting thing. Like, you have produced 41 world champions, but you've also impacted the lives of thousands of people, many of whom may have gone on to other things because of that very positive influence of Kronk. And I think that's something that maybe the boxing fans alone, they kind of skip over, but it seems that Kronk has had this massive and positive influence, and I think those legacies are equally important.
I think that's where Paul touched on, like, again, and to be clear, Emmanuel trained 41 world champions at different stages of their career. Not all of those champions came from the original basement, but Emmanuel took that foundation from that basement in that Kronk gym, and again, took it all over the world, whether it was, with a fighter overseas, in the one of the furthest reaches in the corners of the world. He took that spirit of Detroit, that Kronk spirit, all over the map. And I think back to that point, yes, and then Paul gave a perfect example. It's the gentleman who's painting the gym right now. This gentleman took lessons that he learned in that gym, went on to become a very successful local business owner. And because Emmanuel gave something special to him, Kronk gave something special to him, he's now giving back. And as Paul said, that's how the cycle will continue. And that's how we'll not just honor Emmanuel's legacy from the past, but continue to make sure it lives moving into the future.
I mean, it's a beautiful legacy to have. I think many of us can think back to times in our childhood where, whether it was a teacher, a sports coach, a mentor, and they, they live forever in our memories. And I'm quite certain that there are thousands of people in not just in Detroit, but who will have that such a positive feeling, and I think that's just an awesome legacy for any human being to have.
Yeah, and we see it daily on the socials that we manage, and most recently with the gym coming online, we've got the pre-sale out, and people can click on a link and join now. So it enables like email and SMS notifications on updates as we get live. But the comments, and to your point, Bob, people said, oh, I bumped into him at an airport. I met him at the shopping store, and he stopped everything he was doing, and he left a mark. And
yeah.
This is just what the guy was. He had high charisma, massive warm personality, as well as being the greatest boxing trainer of all time, representing this brand. So we've got a lot to live up to, but we're not scared of that challenge neither.
Now, why was this the right time to bring Kronk back to Detroit?
Well, with Detroit, that'd be like without having, Ford Motor Company, for example, being home. Detroit is home. That's where Kronk belongs. And for me personally, I walked away from the sport/business for many years, and I had no interest in returning. And this Manuel's wife and daughter had opened up a gym, and unfortunately kind of got hit with a real knockout punch, if you will. When COVID came, there was a flood at the gym, and they moved it over to a nonprofit youth center, where this location did an amazing job for kids in that particular suburban community. And they had a really, nice little amateur team. But when I was contacted about coming back, I know what Kronk is. It needs to be in the city. It needs to be in the neighborhood. It needs to be building champions in the ring. And yes, we do want to have efforts to give the youth for career paths and mentorship and excuse me, and provide a lot of support outside the ring. But, to make it clear, I came back, and while I do believe in everything that we touched on previously, I'll say this to add to the mix. I'm here to build champions again. And that's why I'm assembling a cast of a good support system from guys that I grew up in the original gym with, that are going to now not just serve as great senior leaders and mentors, but also develop the next generation of great Kronk coaches underneath their leadership as well.
That would be awesome, and I'm sure that boxing fans worldwide are sort of salivating at the thought of this. Almost a factory that maybe can produce more champions, especially Americans, especially American heavyweights. It would be good to see American heavyweights once again. I think we're kind of missing American heavyweights.
We are, and it was a pretty common phrase used several years back, and people would say, "Well, where's the next American heavyweight champion?" Well, he's playing middle linebacker somewhere at a college,
That's
maybe at
right.
U of M or Oklahoma or et cetera. But I think again, there's been a tremendous resurgence of boxing with a lot of these big cards that you're seeing now. And in the American market, I think is hungry for us to get back in not just a heavyweight mix, but the storylines. That's one of the things that Kronk always had, and that we did so well here. When you look back at the old days of ABC, CBS,
Yeah.
network television, boxing, where you told the story of the fighter, you got to see the fighter progress, and you kind of knew their storyline. You knew a little bit about their family and where they came from. So that's another thing that we're working on as well. Like Paul said, there's a lot of different branches to this tree, and creating original content is going to be a part of that, and make sure we're telling the stories of these guys for the fans so they can get to know them on a personal level, not just professional.
That would be awesome. I mean, I've been a fan of boxing since the 1960s. And of course, then by the 1970s, when the American boxers were so dominant, it seems like I'm missing something now. And, it's I hear you. They have a lot of other sports that they can play.
Well, and to touch on again something we were speaking on a moment ago, is it starts in the amateurs. And these days it's you used to drive by Kronk and you had a baseball diamond outside, there was a basketball court indoors, there were parks and rec activities. You drive by a park these days, there's no kids playing in the parks
Yeah.
anymore. And then sports have gotten so competitive at such a young age now, where parents are pumping thousands of dollars into these elite level training programs. So boxing is one of the last sports where it's affordable for a parent that may be struggling to just get by. And that's something again that we wanted to make sure that we made this not just a safe space for kids, but a place that was affordable for them to come. Because I know, let's be honest, this isn't like one of these elite level, football or baseball training schools. Sometimes, that lunch on a Saturday afternoon before these kids go to an amateur tournament, that might be the only meal some of these kids get that whole day.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure that we take care of these kids, do the right thing outside the ring, but bring back the resurgence and the love of American amateur boxing.
That's so such a laudable goal. The Brewster Wheeler Recreation Center, what makes that the ideal home?
I'll start it off. I'll let Paul jump in on the tail end of this. But the thing I love about it again is it's literally a stone's throw away from the other sports franchises. You can look right across our field and see the Detroit Lions Stadium, Comerica Park, where the Detroit Tigers play. You can see the iconic Fox Theater, home to so many amazing shows and acts throughout the years. And then you've got the Little Caesars Arena, where the Detroit Pistons and the Detroit Red Wings play. And as you touched on earlier, it's not just the home of Joe Louis, but it's actually where Emanuel Stewart had his amateur boxing career as well. And there was just an amazing opportunity that presented itself through a very dear friend of our program, our community liaison for us, Reverend Terrence. And it just kind of fell into place. And I think Paul could tell you a little bit more about what it means to the overall big picture of things.
No, it was an absolute blessing, Bob, that this came our way. Maybe a month after we closed on acquiring the IP and trademarks of the business, I was reached out to by the mayor's office that had interest in something about Kronk, and he's a big boxing fan, Mike Duggan. Very happy that we'd done it, and as John said, things materialized, and we were offered a spot. Now, realistically, business plan wise, we acquired the business May of 2024. To have physical bricks and mortar is an absolute must, but it was 2-3 years down the line because of the investment. We need to get the property, we need to rebuild the whole place, and then furnish it to be a boxing gym, stroke fitness gym. However, we were offered the Brewster Center with some very, very good incentives. I was asked to sign a letter of intent, which I did, to say I would not look at anywhere else. And we signed a deal at the Brewster. There's an overriding, much bigger picture project going on there, Bob. It's a 30,000 square foot building, Brewster. It was derelict for 37 years.
Wow.
As John said, Emmanuel trained there, Diana Ross played there, the Globetrotters played there. Eleanor Roosevelt broke ground on the original building, so it's steeped in history. And to top it all off, the Brown Bomber, his ring is still in the basement, and it's about to be preserved, and they're not going to rip it out. But the ring mat is there, and the four corner posts that are shaved off at floor level. But he trained there for many, many years. So the whole building, 30,000 square feet. We have got 3,500 square feet, and we're really marching on with the development. In fact, John and I are heading straight there after this podcast to meet with painter. We're looking at picture designs, and the flooring's going in next week. So we're very, very excited to having Kronk back downtown Detroit, a very fertile area for the kids. And as John said, we're amongst all the other franchises, significant Detroit landmarks, and Kronk was always referred to as Detroit's fifth franchise. Well, now we're right in situ of the other four, and we've got some good links with them as well. So we're very excited to be at the Brewster.
Excellent. I mean, what specific plans do you have, if you can share them, with how you're going to reach out to the youth of today? With so many competing interests, and I think we all probably understand that the young kids today are not the young kids of our respective youths. Are you working with any local partnerships, any youth organizations to try and bring them in?
100%. There's lots of that going on from a community perspective. Don will touch on is inundated with phone calls from other boxing clubs, people that he's known in his past that either were or around the time he was at Kronk, that have got other programs that would like to join us to instantly kickstart our amateur program. But as I mentioned earlier, Bob, with the social media presence that we've been very happy to grow quite significantly over the last year, a lot of people are aware about it. And because of our brand and our name, we'll get the Fox 2 down there, Detroit News, Free Press. This will be so heavily advertised in terms of Kronk is back. And because of that association and that brand that speaks and the memories it invokes, all of those kids that are now adults have got kids, and they'll want them to go through that same place. And we get asked a lot of times, you can't make it like how it was. And we don't argue. No, we can't, because time has passed.
Yeah.
It's something that's captured in time that will never be erased. But we're here to make the new version of Kronk with the same ethics and integrity and grit and standards that Emmanuel demanded from his fighters and his trainers. We're going to be doing just exactly the same.
And it sounds like you've got support from the mayor's office and municipal authorities as well, right? You were saying the mayor is a boxing fan.
No, we've had, and it goes all the way up. We've Wayne County Executive Warren Evans has been a longtime supporter. Sheriff Washington, longtime supporter. Police Chief Todd Bettison, as Paul said, Mayor Michael Duggan, and then even who I believe is safe to say our next mayor of Detroit, Miss Mary Sheffield. She actually, that's her district where the Brewster Center is located, and she fought really hard to save and preserve that center from being demolished. It was actually on the demo list.
Wow!
So there's just so much history that I recall even as a kid, working with so many people in the administrations previous, going back to the Coleman Young era, with like Miss Sheila Cockrell and so many other great legendary Detroit politicians that have always supported this great brand. And that's why it's just so great to be back home in Detroit, because it just touches so many people. Everybody, like Paul said, you wear a Nike shirt, no one's going to stop you in the parking lot, but you wear a Kronk shirt, someone says, wow, I used to train there, or I met Emmanuel Stewart, or my dad used to box there. So it's just really something that resonates in a way that no disrespect to any of the other amazing sports teams in our city, but there's just such a personal touch, such an intimacy that's associated with this brand in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, as a foreigner, it would seem, you know, incongruous in the extreme if Kronk was to be in, say, L.A. It just wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't sound right to me. You know, I like you say, Ford Motor Company, Detroit, Kronk Gym, Detroit. It just sort of naturally fits, doesn't it?
Correct. Yeah. In fact, when I was on the investment cycle meeting the Stewart family, Miss Marie Stewart, Emmanuel's wife, and daughter Sylvia, I made that parallel. Being a Manchester lad, I said not having Kronk in Detroit is like not having Manchester United in Manchester. It's just wrong,
Yeah,
and
it
we
just
felt
doesn't feel right.
strongly about
Yeah.
it. Doesn't feel right, and the brand went through like a you know a period of lull, and we got the opportunity to bring it back. So step by step, we're putting the right foundations in place, and we're building a proper business. And we're very excited to expand upon the foundations that we're laying. So we're doing it methodically and strategically. We've got a great team, and very excited for all of the future opportunities. We've got some really exciting partnerships that are going to be announced within the next 4 weeks across certain sectors of business. And the brand just continues to resonate, and we get business owners and organizations that are reaching out to us. We have no inside sales. We're not ringing people to say, hey, would you like to do something? There's always an inbound to one of us on our own networks to say, hey, what can we do with you guys? Seeing that you're coming back, I saw your press conference with the mayor. So that press conference back on June the 4th really legitimized our efforts to the city and nationally because it was picked up by the AP, and now we're just capitalizing upon that.
Do you, I mean, you know, one always, you know, doesn't want to look too far ahead, but on the other hand, you know, we have to. Do you envision expanding the Kronk brand nationally or possibly globally with other cities, you know, gyms elsewhere? Obviously, you've got all the apparel, which I must buy one of those shirts that you're wearing. That's you've already sold me on it. But what's your vision? I guess what I'm asking is, what does success look like for you, like 5 years down the road?
I think I will go twofold on this one. I'll start off from a boxing vision, and I think Paul can speak on brand expansion as well. But one thing about Kronk we touched on earlier was it was a vehicle that put Detroit on the map globally. You know, we attracted fighters from all over the world that came to train here. Dennis Andres from England is a perfect example. You know, he came here to Detroit, fought Tommy Hearns, lost his world title, and then immediately after that joined the Kronk gym, won his world title back, and then in the process, you know, there's just so many other fighters from so many different countries, you know, Germany, Mexico, Australia. I mean, you could just go South Africa. You could just go on and on the places that Kronk has planted a flag in. So for me, on the boxing side, starting with the amateurs, one of the things I'm going to work on, once again we get a solid foundation of our amateur team here locally, is going to be able to have the support from other local businesses on the sponsorship side that will enable us to take those kids on not just domestic trips but international trips. You know, like my dear friend Lennox Lewis, he runs a wonderful amateur program in Jamaica and Canada. You know, Andy Lee has very strong ties and roots, obviously, in Ireland. And, you know, what I'd like to see is us tap into, again, working with some of our former Kronk fighters in these destinations where our kids can go almost on like a foreign exchange type
Yeah.
program where they could experience different cultures and get out and get away from the neighborhood that they see every day. And there's a big world out there, and boxing can be a vehicle to take them around the world and help experience so much. And then as well as professionally, again, I think, like, you know, which Paul can get into now, but where you're attracting fighters from all over the world, but then we're also taking our fighters and we're going to fight on all these different promotions all over the world. And I think, again, that's something very special with our brand. Even though boxing is an individual sport, we are the Kronk boxing team.
Yeah, I think it's, you touched on something that I think is often overlooked in lots of the boxing media, and that's how like the great Lennox Lewis has this interest in developing young fighters. Obviously, Lennox Lewis is, a Canadian. The Brits, I guess, have reclaimed him, but there's a very strong Canadian connection, and to think that Lennox Lewis is still devoting time and effort into developing young people is something that's awesome, and that you've got that relationship with him.
Yep, Paul and I, we speak with Lennox and his wife somewhat frequently. We just sent him a message the other day, just giving them, we keep them updated on our progress at Kronk. And again, as I was saying earlier, a lot of great memories in Canada. I think that is probably the easiest, if you would use the term, lowest hanging fruit for us to look at for brand expansion. And again, we want to make sure we get our house in order. The foundation is strong. We don't want to start running too fast and then, find out there's a crack in the foundation later. We want to build it up solid.
Yeah.
That's where Paul's expertise comes in from his previous successes in building large scale global businesses. And then when we, looking just right across the river, it's just a natural fit for us. Canada has always been a great fight country. I've spent a lot of time over there. We used to have a lot of the hockey players would come over from Windsor, Ontario. They would train at the gym. Kirky Scott was kind of like their version of a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah.
He would bring them over. And just so many of the guys from the NHL trained at Kronk over the years. We had one of our champions, Todd Naden, was from Canada. We still speak to him. And then our first pro signing under the new brand is a young man named Hunter Lee, a very promising young prospect who's now 3-0. He won a total of, I believe, 11 or 12 various Canadian amateur titles. Again, just an amazing personality, really, really good athleticism, $1 million smile. He's got the complete package, we think, in and out of the ring. And to tie it kind of back into where we stay true to the root of Kronk's original formula for success, his trainer is Theo Third Chambers, who grew up in the gym since he was 6 years old. And Emmanuel groomed him. He trained under Walter Smith. And you're talking about somebody who banged heads in that gym with all of the lighter weight world champions and had a very promising career of his own before, unfortunately, an eye injury sidelined him. But he's just a natural born teacher. So again, he has somebody from the original, as old school as it gets,
right,
cut from that cloth, that's now guiding his career in the gym.
That's outstanding. Paul, did you want to add anything to that? Was there?
Absolutely. Going back to your question of the 5-year vision, John covered the boxing side excellently, and everything meshes. In fact, we spoke about this. We have a team meeting every Friday, and we spoke about this today. Everything's a waterfall effect. It's great having conversations with other businesses, but we've got to have some momentum on the back end. And then we've got a lot of momentum, but we have one fighter. We've signed 2, but one of them's actually active. So once the fighters are established, and I just look at it as correlating activities. The amateur stable is formed. The pros were getting more and more content, more awareness. We're growing our social exposure. Our merchandise, thankfully, does very, very well. Our only live active revenue stream since coming up to a year, 31st of August last year, we launched. The gym's going to be our secondary revenue stream. And then in terms of the brand, there is so much capability for this brand to be crossover, stroke lifestyle. You put a logo like this on baby wear, on women wear, on drinkware. It's very, very consumable by all and sundry. So we think there's a lot of market space there for us to get into, as well as boxing equipment. We're Kronk. We should be selling boxing gloves.
Yeah.
We should be selling wraps. There's so much to do. But to John's point, and because we talk about it all the time, and even yesterday, my dear friend counseled me a little bit, because I love to get moving and get going and get going. And the minute you do that without a plan, it can quickly implode. And I've failed like that before in business. So we know what we've got with this special brand. And we always said, the team of investors that we are, it's great that we brought this brand back, but the brand's going to succeed and continue to thrive and flourish. We don't want any lulls of the brand on our watch. It should be here to stay. And that's our goal. So unlike people that come into businesses and the previous sector I was in, 31 years in IT, the last 15 or 16 of that in private equity side, you buy an asset, you polish it up, the right people, branding, marketing, services, and you sell it. That's not even in our thought path for this. We want to, first of all, build the business to match where the brand is. The brand's looking down and say, hey, guys, come on.
Yeah.
And we're doing our best day by day to move it forward. So for us, it's not about selling this in 5-7 years to top-ranked UFC, ESPN, and we all walk off. No, this is about having it got to a point that when we're long gone, hopefully our children take this over, or people in the community. I said to the recent guy we hired in at the gym, I don't want just someone to be there as a front desk and that's it. Look around at the opportunities we've got as a multi-tentacle business. Where can your skill set fit in? How can I grow you from that position to leading 50, 60 people in 7 years' time? That's what we want. That's the culture we're starting off.
That's absolutely awesome. I've just got a couple more questions. Again, I'm looking at the clock and wanting to be respectful of your time. What's the most, this is a sort of a very personal question, what's the most rewarding part of your job as the CEO of this legendary, iconic organization?
The fact that I'm actually doing this, Bob, I'll be honest, this was not part of the plan. So John grew up in boxing, real boxing at the gym. I grew up as a boxing fan, like you, Bob, as many others. As you can see behind me, there's lots of Muhammad Ali. That's my North Star in life and in boxing. I learned so much of watching and reading about him. And my dad was a huge fan of his. So I got into boxing because of my dad's interest, who managed to go and see Cassius Clay against Cooper a couple of times in 63 and 66. And I remember him staying outside the Piccadilly Hotel in 66 to try and get a glimpse of him, and he never could. But that got me into boxing, 100%. And for me to go through my life living in Manchester, England, relocated to a company, automotive company called Federal Mogul, 2007, continued my love and passion for boxing, fortunate to go to many fights. I then got an opportunity to buy the biggest brand in the world of the sport that I love. Now, that for me is extremely surreal, mentally surreal, to a point where we signed the deal. I resigned, retired from 31 years in IT the next day. I gave them 6 weeks notice, and I've been doing this the last year. So the reward for me has been, from a personal perspective, that I've gone and followed my passion.
Wow.
And we've got no thoughts of failure. That doesn't come in. We're going to do it. And we've all taken different twists and turns in life. And the fact that John and I actually know each other and are doing this together as owners, that's another crazy story that's for another podcast, because we've led completely different lives across a very, very big pond. And here we are talking daily, resurfacing the biggest brand in the world of boxing. So sometimes, as John reminded me yesterday, because we get each other through our growth stages, we've got this. Yeah, it might not be flying like we want it to, but it's going to come. And the gym's going to be the kickstart of that, to have that actual stake in the ground, that base that has not been in Detroit for maybe 10 years plus. It's going to be absolutely huge. So the reward for me is nothing about monetary. It's about, I'm able to do something that I love. And hopefully the business experience that I've attained over the years, I can apply that into Kronk to ensure we can scale and get longevity without fear and worry of closing down. That's my biggest goal.
I'm massively jealous, looking at your enthusiasm there, and it's a testament really to how boxing can bring people of disparate backgrounds from different parts of the world all together. It really is. I think boxing might be unique among sports in that it actually can achieve that.
100%. No, it's got an uncanny way of doing that, just connecting the dots, connecting people, and as I said to many friends, it's like to be able to buy a franchise of this size. If the Dallas Cowboys became available, Man United became available, that's where Kronk is in those respective sports.
Yes.
Chicago Bulls, we own the logos to Kronk, and Canada is one of the regions we own as well. And another part of this podcast with you, Bob, is to let you know, any of your viewers that are watching that would like to reach out, licensing opportunities, franchising opportunities, investment opportunities. It's a region that we can fully operate in, and you're 40 minutes away from where we're sat right now. So we'd be open to anything like that in time. You asked about the expansion, and that's what came up on our call this morning. Well, we've not got our own gym up and running yet. We've had many inbounds for a Kronk in Denver or New Jersey. There used to be one in, I think, Arizona, right, John, many years ago. We're not ready. We want to make ours right. And if we're going to franchise and license something out, we've got to hand them the playbook of marketing, the type of characters that you hire, the ROI, the royalties. Everything has to be laid out. But to John's point, they can't all be boxing gyms. Kronk boxing team is in Detroit. So whether we have a derivative of like a Kronk fitness gym or a Kronk hit gym minus a ring, so it's just fitness trainers,
yes,
we can leverage the brand in time.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. My last question. If a young person walked into Kronk tomorrow with no money, no experience, just a dream, what do you guys tell them?
John, you kick that one off.
You can achieve anything you want. And that's what it did for me. My personal story, like I said, I used to come around the gym and did a little training, and one day I decided I wanted to be in the boxing business. And I called a writer at the Detroit News, and his name was George Puskas, and he gave me 3 phone numbers. And even though I had, seen Emmanuel a little bit, had little interactions, gave me Emmanuel Stewart's personal phone number, Don King's, and another gentleman named Bill Kazurski. Well, of course, being a 15-year-old kid, I'm going to call Don King first.
Yeah.
Well, Don never called back. He did call back many years later on many different topics. That's probably a whole nother podcast there. But Emmanuel again had such a big team, and it was thriving, and that was probably the most exciting. But then it was Bill Kazurski who first took me under his wing, letting me come out to all the Kronk fights that he promoted, and I started to learn the promotional business. And then slowly Emmanuel brought me in underneath him and started to teach me the boxing business. So to kind of bring it full circle, I'm a product of that. I was a young kid with a dream, and walking through that famous red door that said, "This door has led many to pain and fame." Well, it truly did. And life is going to knock you down along the way. And you're a little kid with a dream like that. You got to be willing to take the hits, as I said in that Rocky Balboa movie. But if you keep getting up and you keep coming back, you're eventually going to win in this game called life. And I think that's one of the beautiful things. If you come to a boxing gym, of course, we're a little biased, come to a place like Kronk, but you can achieve whatever it is you want in life. And we're here, I think, under this new team, especially the way that Paul and I have structured this, to make sure that you're not going to slip through the cracks, at least not if we can help it. So even if you may not become a national Golden Gloves champion or an Olympian or a world champion, we can provide other avenues to help you achieve success in life outside the ring.
Well, thank you. That's excellent. And Paul, is there anything that you would add to that?
I can't really top that. That was wonderful. But all I would say is, if that, and I know that kid will come in and there'll be a little arm on the shoulder, and I'll be like, look up there. Look at all these super great champions. You can be one of them if you want to put in the work, and here's the place for it. And like John said, they might not all be on the wall, but if we can get 50 Avises, the gentleman that's doing our painting, to leave an impression on a child at that age where they absorb and look and learn and watch the most and desperate for some mentorship and leadership and life coach, we can provide that to them, just like we're doing for our fighters. I know we're wrapping up real soon, but another thing that we really, really care about, we're not just getting fighters in the ring. We want to help them with wealth management, with tax management. So if the unfortunate does happen to a fighter, which we all know, the hurt game, catch retina perforated eardrum, we've built them a 401k. They've got a wealth management advisor. We'll reintroduce them to civilian world in the business as an ambassador. Have them do commentary, punditry, website work. We want to make this a full ecosystem. If you fight for us, you stay with us, you succeed with us, you might fail, you might get injured, but you're coming back into the fold and train the next. We're just going to continue that ethos.
That is absolutely fabulous. Gentlemen, I just want to thank both of you for coming on my small channel here. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to both of you. Wish you all the very best in your ventures. I'm absolutely certain that it's going to be massively successful. And I very much hope that we can have an opportunity to speak again down the road, and we can have an update.
Love to. It'd be our pleasure. And I want to say a special shout out to all of our loyal fans and supporters in Canada. Canada, again, has been a very special place. I've worked with a lot of fighters in Canada. I actually promoted a couple of shows over in Canada. So we're looking forward to getting back over there, and make sure everybody follow Hunter Lee, and be on the lookout, because there's going to be some big things to come. He's a very special kid.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Same as Bob. Thank you for having us. And yeah, you've got 2 bridges and a tunnel. So get yourselves over to the gym, and we'll look after you. It'll be great to see you all.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you, guys. It really has been excellent. Everybody watching, follow this story, follow Kronk Gym, and keep an eye out for the new breed of Kronk fighters. Thank you, gentlemen. Much appreciated.
Cheers, Bob.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.